Hi, everybody. I haven't posted in a long, long time, and I thought I'd say hello today in the middle of this pandemic with a particular message that I feel compelled to share with you from up here in self-isolation in Canada. Um, like you in the US, we have been required by government to stay indoors as much as possible, except for shopping and the occasional walk and social distancing, etc., etc. And it's a real, I think, transitional time um, in the world and in everybody's lives as a result of COVID-19. I'm not the first to say that, so I'm not going to claim this statement as being unique. But what I wanted to talk about was that when you in the United States are ready to commence your primaries, I want you to think long and hard about how your decisions affect the rest of the world. Um, the American president does affect the rest of the world. You have a very powerful and productive country. And I think that when the other 50% of the states go to the polls, I'm asking you to very seriously think about that responsibility. Donald Trump goes without saying, has his own agenda. It's mostly about himself and his family. And he hasn't served you well at all. Medicare is essentially lost if many of you have lost your jobs. And I want to say that sitting here in Canada with a Medicare for All system, and I happen to have had surgery this year. And all the costs for my surgery and hospitalization and doctor's appointments and all that were all covered for free, covered in our taxes. And I would urge you to think about that for yourself very deeply. I'm concerned that your shock jocks and your right of center politicians, to say the least, scare you away from this with remarks about socialism and communism and all that stuff. And nothing could be further from the truth. You are the last of the Western countries to even consider taking this program on. Everybody else in the Western developed world has it. Even people in the global South have some kind of universal Medicare for the most part. In many areas, not all, but many. And so really think about this as a healthy step for the American people to take. The other thing is that it seems clear to me every time I see Joe Biden that he is declining when he debates, when he can debate. He resorts to, grand sort of gestures and generalities, much like I hate to say, a 12-year-old would. 12-year-olds, as they're developing, sort of get the general concept and the general idea that they echo a lot, but they're not able to expand on their ideas simply because they don't have the knowledge to do so. And older people who are declining can sort of remember generalized concepts, but when they are asked to expand on those ideas, they simply can't. And I've seen footage of Joe Biden where, his wife Jill has to come and get him at the end of a speech because he starts to wander off. And I've seen that more than once. So it goes without saying that I favor Bernie Sanders for president. He seems, infinitely prepared for this job. He's been, working hard on the same messages over and over and over again since he was mayor of Burlington, Vermont. I don't know if you know this, but I recently learned this myself, that Burlington, Vermont has been green in terms of a green economy and green energy system. Not perhaps not entirely, but largely since Bernie Sanders was mayor. And sometimes there are gifts that are given to us and we don't recognize them. And I think that Bernie Sanders is the gift to the United States that many refuse to recognize. You are facing a pandemic of epic proportions, much more so now than Canada is and many other places in the world. You've now surpassed China and Italy. And I really think you really need to think about the long-term benefits of having such a caring man and an infinitely politically prepared man in terms of policy, local policy, health policy, foreign policy, Green New Deal, all of that stuff, and wanting to bring everybody in, just infinitely caring about everyone in the United States. I see that every time he rallies, every time he makes a speech on YouTube, every time he talks about COVID-19 or the coronavirus. He just wants the best for you. And he's being politically rejected because of, being stamped as something that he is not. All he is an infinitely well-prepared man who wants to lead the American people in a way that they can lead themselves. That you can teach yourself to go higher than you've ever imagined in terms of self-care and care for other people, care for your neighbors. I believe that it's a wonderful thing. So when the rest of you go to the polls, when the time comes, when the pandemic passes and you're able to organize, or if you're able to organize voting online, because it seems that voting in person is dangerous right now with the necessity for distancing. Consider Bernie Sanders as your next president. I don't think you can go wrong. And I think that Joe Biden, in his own words, is just going to give you more of the same. So what you're going to end up with is maybe some concessions around COVID-19 testing and treatment, but no long-term plan for Medicare for all. And as he said in his own words, he doesn't plan on changing anything. So, there's going to be more corporate injections and very little for individuals and families. So, up here in Canada, when, our Prime Minister all week has been announcing 75% wage subsidies until this is over, mortgage relief, support for seniors, all the kinds of things, $2,000 a month. That was something that Bernie Sanders has been calling for and is still calling for. So while the rest of the world is doing this, Sweden is doing it, they're doing more than Canada is. France, Germany, they're all supporting their citizens. The United States is lagging far behind because of the sort of capitalist focus on life. And there's nothing wrong with capitalism. Bernie Sanders supported capitalism in Burlington, Vermont, by the way, when he was mayor. He wasn't anti-capitalist. But there's got to be something beyond just capitalism and competition and, pushing away the other guy and all that stuff. So really think about where you want to go from here for your future, and how your country wants to approach other countries in terms of war and peace and foreign policy. Bernie's got it all. I'm not exaggerating. I've watched him for years. I've seen his expertise, and I really wish you the best. And I think Bernie Sanders is the best for the United States of America and for the rest of the world. as the President of the United States. Be well.